You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network.
Time to sharpen those swords. You're listening to Sabres Semantics, a hard-hitting interview and discussion show featuring players, alumni, media, and all others who have or still cover the NHL's Buffalo Sabres. With interesting stories from the past and current objective analysis, this show is sure to provide an entertaining and unique perspective for both Sabres and hockey fans alike.
Oh, brother, we are not worthy!
Exclusively on the Armchair GM Sports Network. Now, here's your host of Sabres Semantics, Brandon Caputo.
Welcome into another episode of Sabres Semantics right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network, proudly brought to you by the Niagara Employment Help Centre, helping people find work in Niagara since 1983. Check out their up-to-date job board at ehc.on.ca to find your next work opportunity today. Brandon Caputo and Austin Broad are with you to discuss most recently the news regarding the Sabres, Tage Thompson response to that hit the other night, as well as Kevyn Adams. A lot of trades going on around the league, and the Sabres still have not made any trades, so a little bit of a mini deadline before the Four Nations here, and we're going to discuss what we think of the Sabres not making any moves, and if they are going to get into the trade market here with a month left, a little bit over a month before the NHL trade deadline. Make sure to give us a follow on X at Sabres Semantics. Stay up to date with all of our Sabres coverage, as well as on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all that fun sort of thing. And thank you to those watching on the video version on YouTube. Make sure to hit like, hit subscribe, and smash that bell. And thank you to those watching or listening today on your favorite on-demand audio platforms. So, Austin, before we get into the Kevyn Adams portion of things and the Sabres not getting involved in the trade market a little bit later there and what could possibly happen there, we got to talk about what the big news is regarding the Sabres, and it's not their 3-game winning streak, which is nice, but it's the fact that in that win against the New Jersey Devils the other night, Tage Thompson was hit up high by Stefan Noesen, and do you want to say that it was a lackluster response? Because if you listen to Lindy Ruff in the postgame, he called that straight-out BS, and also Jason Zucker said after the game that basically them winning the game was response enough and not them taking a dumb instigator penalty.
So yeah, this might be like the cop-out answer, but I think the actual correct response is somewhere in the middle of literally everything that's been going on. In the moment, I was hot. There absolutely has to be a response when you see your best forward / assistant captain laying face down on the ice without a helmet. There has to be. There's no excuse there not to be. You throw in some of the other factors that really made me hot with this was Noesen took out Zucker after he scored earlier in the game. Noesen wasn't the one who hit Dahlin earlier in the game, but Dahlin thought it was him, so that's how Dahlin took that penalty early in the first period. It's like Noesen had kind of been running around that entire game. And you can't say there wasn't people in the lineup or on the ice, even on the ice at the time. Dennis Gilbert was dressed in this game, not on the ice at the time of the Tage hit, but was in this game. Everyone saw the Zucker thing. Beck Malenstein, we've seen him step up before too. Gilbert has stepped up before too. But the Tage incident itself is okay, Yuri Kulich, don't necessarily expect the 20-year-old rookie to do anything. Don't necessarily people get hot at Owen Power all they want. I know he's a lightning rod for this stuff because he's not a physical defender. Not his job. Would I have loved to see him go do something? Sure. The real issue to me is, one, there was no response, and two, your assistant captain, Matthias Samuelsson, who is supposed to be this big, rugged defensive defenseman, did nothing. Zucker, same thing, but Zucker said he didn't see it. I got to believe him. He's a veteran of 700 games in this league. I got to believe that if he didn't see it, he didn't see it. Now that I've sat on it for, it happened Sunday. Now that I've sat on it for a little bit, I'm still hot. I still think there should have been a response in the moment. I do think that people trying to compare it to the Miller, Lucic, all that situation is a little bit too far. we have seen responses earlier in the season, so it's not like this team is lacking that fight for each other. We saw Darlene do it in the Washington game when Tage got hit. We've seen other people drop the gloves and do things like that. So I think you have every right to be mad that there wasn't anything in the moment. Was the winner response? Yes, in a way. But you gave up a shorthanded goal 20 seconds after the 5-minute major. So, like, I don't know. Like, I don't think it's nearly as big of an issue as it's blown up to be, but I get why it is, given the history of this team via the incident of Miller and Lucic and just the overall bad taste this team leaves in people's mouths after 14 years of no playoffs.
And they were up 4-1 in that game. And then all this stuff happens. It becomes a 4-3 game. Jack Hughes scored shorthanded, make it 4-3. Sabres do hold on. And again, like, we could be coming on here and talking about the fact that they've been playing better as of late compared to where they've been. I know they only won one game out west, but then they came back home and have won 3 straight over Boston, Nashville, and New Jersey. But and Luukkonen has helped with that. But at the same point, like, is this a bigger underlying issue than just a hit? And luckily for the early, I guess, diagnosis of this, Tage is going to be okay, which is thankfully a good thing that he's not going to be on the shelf for a long period of time. But I'm with you on this. Like, I think that everybody's initial reaction is like somebody needs to go out there and take the guy's head off. And according to Lindy Ruff, he said that there were guys that wanted to go after him on the next shift. Because, like you said, maybe not necessarily the line that was out there were the guys that were going to be fighting or that you would want fighting at that point, because we all know that you could possibly get the instigator penalty or some guy gets kicked out for the whole game and the Sabres end up losing that game, which would be even worse in that scenario with Tage out. But Lindy also talked about the fact that New Jersey beat up Philly in the game prior and that they played a very physical, tough game, and Lindy was expecting a playoff-like atmosphere, and he liked the response that they came out with, and that's why he put a guy like Gilbert in the lineup. And even to his quote along the lines of, there were some guys that didn't play because he didn't think that they were up for the moment or up for the challenge. Like, I don't think the New Jersey Devils are the 1980s Broad Street Bullies here, but from his perspective, and obviously with what he said post-game with that quick, it's bullshit quote, he doesn't think it's an issue.
Yeah, so like that's kind of where I go back to. We've seen the response earlier in the year in other incidents. So like for people to want to paint the team as soft and they won't stick up for themselves as a whole, like I don't necessarily agree with that. But for people to be frustrated in that moment, I have no issue with that. I was frustrated in that moment. Lindy was also frustrated in that moment. Like I get what Lindy is saying. Like as a coach, it's like, hey man, like if you don't respond immediately, you can't, like, I don't blame you for wanting to respond on the next shift, but like I also get the mentality of, hey, immediately after we gave up the shorthanded goal, there's no point in doing something stupid and letting the game throw away. But also for fans who say, I don't care if they win the game, we're in last place, I don't really have an argument against that either, because that is the truth. Like, don't get me wrong, if the Sabres are in the thick of the playoff heat where every 2 points matters, yes, please don't do something stupid and cost yourself 2 points. I have no issue with them wanting to win the game. That's what they do. It's how they're hardwired. They should absolutely want to win every game. But like from a fan perspective, who cares if they win the game? As a fan, like, I don't know. I don't really have anything to argue against that. But my beef is there should have been a response in this game. There absolutely should have. I don't think it's an overarching issue with this team where they're soft and don't fight or stick up for each other. Because like I said, like they've done it before in the past. My issues were more like Samuelsson has a letter on his chest.
Right.
He is a defensive guy. We've seen him throw the body around. Like, to me, it's like you got to be the guy with the letter on your chest. You have to be the guy to go do that, because whether people want to, I can guarantee if Darlene was out there, something was happening. I've seen Darlene snap at smaller stuff. Darlene would have seen Tage on the ice. In my opinion, I have no doubt in my mind he would have went and did something. Krebs, no doubt in my mind, would have went and did something. If Gilbert was on the ice, I'm fairly certain he would have done something.
So you think it was just based off of the 4 other skaters that were out on the ice at that time?
I'm not going to get mad at Yuri Kulich, a rookie, for not doing something. Zucker said he didn't see the hit. I got to take his word for him, because like if you watch Jason Zucker, he's not a soft hockey player. Is he a fighter? No, of course not, but he's not a soft hockey player. Owen Power, Yeah, he's never dropped the gloves before in his career. I'm not necessarily expecting him to do it now. Like, I know people don't like him because he's not tough enough, but like, that's not his game. To me, it boils down to there was a leader on the ice that didn't step up. He absolutely deserves most of the scrutiny there. And it also doesn't hurt that Samuelsson has just been underperforming most of his career. So maybe I am holding it against him more than I should. But to me, it's like, I don't know, man. You have a letter on your chest. Do something.
He said post game too he didn't see it either, so I don't know if you believe him on that.
I do, but I don't, because the captain also said that can never happen again. Basically saying there has to be a response next time. Now, look, later in the game, evening the score, I don't necessarily know that I care that much about that. To me, it was the immediate moment there should have been a response. This is the immediate moment. So, like, that's where I'm kind of in the middle. Yes, I wanted the immediate response. No, I don't think this team is full of a bunch of wimps that won't stick up for themselves. I think there's a middle ground here, and that's probably where people should lie.
And I do think that the initial reaction when you're 26 goal scorer and 48 point, he's the leader on your team in goals and points. Yeah. He's your best player offensively, is laying there on the ice. It's almost like people wanted, if we flash back to when Chris Drury got that, elbow in the face by Chris Neal, and then Lindy Ruff throws out Mayer, Peters, and Coletta against Alfredson, Spezza, and Heatley, and immediately when they drop the face-off, they just go at it with one of the most iconic NHL line brawls in history that still gets replayed to this day. I don't think we were going to see that happen in 2025, unfortunately.
No.
But I think people were expecting some blood, if we really want to get cryptic with it. But again, like, I don't want to just start seeing guys go out there and start headhunting people, because I don't think that does a whole lot. But like you said, I think that if there was going to be a response and the next time Nason got on the ice, that there probably should have been, just like when you mentioned it earlier, the Lucic and Miller situation. Gostad dropped the gloves with Lucic the next game, but it almost felt like forced, and it almost felt like that really didn't accomplish anything.
Yeah, and like the thing with Nason is he was kicked out, so it's not like you could even go after him the next shift, because there is no next shift. So you could go after somebody else if you want. Yeah, like you said, that doesn't really happen nowadays. It's more, hey, there was a hit, we settle it right then and there, and then it is what it is. If we play each other the next game, maybe, but they also don't play each other again this year.
Do you think that factors into that they don't play the Devils again this season?
I mean, it probably does, right? Because, like, again, I am not one who thinks that you need to drop the gloves after a clean hit. But obviously that wasn't a clean hit. That was a 5-minute major. That was the one time where Nason probably deserved some retribution. Clean hits, things like that, I get annoyed with that stuff. I think it's dumb. Like, depending if you watch the Will Cooley hit on Peter Angelo, if you think that was late, sure. But to me, that was a nice clean hit.
That was a good hockey hit.
But that's the way the game has evolved now, where no matter what, if there's a big hit. But that also kind of plays into why there should have been a response, because we see responses to clean hits. Right. We didn't see a response to this dirty hit. So my issue is with that there was no immediate response. I have necessarily no issue with them saying, hey, we beat them. We weren't just going to drop the gloves after the fact when the player wasn't on the ice anymore. I don't necessarily have an issue with that. Like I said, I'm more in the middle, where someone should have went after Nason right then and there, then wipe your hands of it, play the rest of the game. Didn't happen, so, like, I'm annoyed. But I also don't think we need to dissect this team as, oh my God, they're wussies, they're soft, because it's just not the case. Like, we've seen Tage Thompson, Dahlin, Krebs, Clifton, Gilbert. We've seen a ton of people fight this year. Greenway. So, like, I think it's just a classic case of the team stinks. Like, right, they're last place in the Eastern Conference. So, like, when there's an issue like this, we got to be mad at something. So, like, go ahead. If you want to be mad at it, go ahead. I'm right more down the middle, where someone should have punched Nason right in the face and called it a day, and that would have been it.
It's wild because they won the game. Like, what do you think would have happened if they would have lost this game? And all this stuff happened?
Well, then I could see, like, being on the extreme side where how the hell did nothing happen? Like, if they, like, the fact that they scored a shorthanded goal, like, immediately into that 5-minute major, I was literally like, this is what you get for not going after Nason. Like, you deserve this because you didn't do something. Once it calmed down, like, and the 5-minute major was over and the game was over, I was just like, okay, like, I'm annoyed that Nason didn't get hit or someone went after him. But in my brain, I wasn't like, man, this is 22 guys, all wimps. It's more of, yeah, like I said, I've said it 5 times. There's certain people on the ice. There was people on the ice that could have did something. They didn't. I am more angered at the assistant captain not sticking up for his fellow assistant captain. And I think that's pretty much what needs to be said there, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, be pissed off there was no immediate response, but no, like I saw people being like, maybe they need to get tougher. That's what they just did all last offseason. Lafferty's not in the lineup. Okay, Obey Kubel was waived. Mallenstein wasn't on the ice, but you're telling me, like, we've watched Beck Mallenstein all year. You're telling me he's not going to fight. We know he would fight. So like, we can't be like they're a soft team when we know there are players on the team that would do this. It just so happens that the players on the ice, 3 out of 5 of them wouldn't. And the 2 other ones were, one was face down on the ice. Like, we've seen Tage go after people before, whether he's a tough guy or not. We've seen him go after people. And Samuelson, he should be going after people, but he didn't. So it is what it is. It's bad. It's a bad look. It's a definite bad look for certain people. I don't think it's as bad of a look for the entire team as people think it is. Like, put it like this: Lindy Ruff didn't say they're a bunch of wussies. I got to go with Lindy Ruff on this. Like, we know Lindy Ruff's not a soft guy. Lindy Ruff was angry, but not to the extent that everybody else is. So, like, to me, that's kind of where I'm at. Like, how can I be mad if Lindy Ruff was like, yeah, it's BS that everyone thinks we're a soft team, but it was also BS that nobody went after somebody. So
I'm almost in the middle of where Zucker said we won the game, so that was our response, and then the other extreme of we want some guy's arm on, just as a trophy, basically.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like in the middle there where, like, there needs to be something, but I don't need it to just be goon hockey again, because I don't think that accomplishes anything. But again, it's just compiling on, right? Because the Sabres are in last place. We got the standings up on the screen. Like, they're 5 points back of the Flyers for second last in the conference, and it just adds to the fire of all the other things that fans have been able to complain about this year. And maybe this one is a little bit overblown, but they don't get any free passes because it's just been negative after negative that have just compounded to get to where we are right now.
exactly, it's why, like, I think Zucker's response is a proper response if you're in a playoff race, right? Like, hey, we won the game.
Yeah, if you're second in the division or something like that.
Yeah. So it's like, I understand why people are like this. They're bullcrap. Like, this team needs to go after somebody. Like, I understand it. Just because I don't necessarily agree with the people who are saying this team's soft, who cares about the win? I don't agree with that take, but like, I don't blame people for having that take because this team is last place. So it's like, realistically, 2 points does not matter. Blood matters. And like, it's perception versus reality. The reality is this team has stood up for themselves and fought against stuff like that in the past. But the perception going forward is going to be this is a soft hockey team. And like, I can't say the perception is undeserved because like that was a weak response. So they're going to have to deal with it the rest of the season, and we'll see what happens, I guess.
So I think we touched on this on our last episode, but quick thoughts on Tage playing the wing. Obviously, his production's gone up in that sense. Kulich has been good as the top line center, kind of replacing Cousins in that sense, and Thompson, who's had to go to the wing. But what have you seen from the lineup as of late? Anything? Obviously, they've won 3 straight, but still without Greenway. Tyson Kozak's been in and out of the lineup a little bit. Peterka's back on the top line with Kulich and Tage Thompson. Zucker's been moved down to the second line there with Cousins. Anything stick out to you with the way some of these guys are playing?
Well, just first of all, that top line is playing unreal, right? Like, Tage is playing, like you just said, he's on an absolute tear. Peterka is now playing really well to the sense where we thought none of their pending restricted free agents were worthy of a long-term deal. I'm not quite back in on the give Peterka a long-term deal yet, but he's playing good enough to where it's like, okay, maybe you should look at a long-term deal for him because if you bridge him, you could screw yourself. Kulich, not only the fact that he has looked good as a center is encouraging, the fact that he has looked good as a top-line center. Now, I know he's playing with Tage and Peterka, right? Like, that's 2 very good players on this team. But the fact that he is holding his own, Lindy has trusted him to take defensive and key offensive zone faceoffs. That is a big deal. The fact that, now we could very well bite our tongues and 2 years from now we have a Kulich just playing crappy like Jack Quinn situation, but I don't think that's the case with Kulich. I've seen enough out of him to feel confident that he will continue to play well as long as you have good players around him. He's got a wicked shot. He's got great punk sets. He can work off the puck really well. And if you watch, I think the benefit of Tage on the wing now and is being healthy is if you watch them, like Tage and Kulich do rotate defensively in the defensive zone with the center responsibility. So it kind of gives them a little bit more to work with there. Now, depending on what happens in the future, if Tage is a long-term winger again, well, you better hope Coolidge stays as well as he is, because if Tage moves to the wing permanently and Cousins hasn't figured it out yet, there's a gaping hole for that number one center.
Ryan McLeod.
Right? And if Cousins is gone and Tage stays on the wing, well, as much as I love Coolidge, we can't just be handing the number one center role to a 20-year-old with one good season. So, it's good and it's bad. But I will say, whether he's on the wing or center, when Tage is healthy, this is what you get. Right? I know there was a stretch where he was not playing well at 5-on-5. Well, he just wasn't healthy. You can tell now he's healthy again, and he's dominant. He's the dominant number one center. He's a winger now. He's the dominant top line scoring forward that we have seen the last couple of years, and it's just the proof is in the pudding. He's on a tear, and there's not much else you could say about it. When he's on the ice, the team is good. When he's playing with JJ Peterka is elevated. He's helped elevate Yuri Coolidge. It's just, this is what you get when you sign a player like Tage to that contract and put expectations at his feet. He's meeting, or even depending on what you think, he's exceeding expectations. So he's definitely not something that you can point out as a negative on the way this year is played. The rest of the lineup, I don't know. I still am very, very down on Dylan Cousins. I think he's still a good hockey player, but clearly just watching him, it's just something's up with him right now. It's not clicking. It hasn't been clicking all year. McLeod playing really well. That's a good thing, because he's also a pending restricted free agent. That, and then just, again, we'll talk about it later, I guess, but for God's sakes, they need three, depending on how you view Connor Clifton, they need 2 to 3 NHL defensemen, because I can't watch Henry Jokiharju play hockey anymore. Bryson's fine, but you can upgrade that. And even Samuelson, Samuelson's just not good.
I mean, I think you expected more from the point production. Again, we're not expecting these guys to be world beaters, but more than 10 points, is that too much to ask for some of these guys? I don't know. I look at Samuelson and Jokiharju specifically. Those are guys that can or have produced offense in the past, at least a little bit. Clifton, maybe not so much, but it's just...
Clifton's had a positive year this year, I think. Compared to last year, I think Clifton's been a bright spot compared to last year.
Yeah, well, last year was pretty low. So, we were setting the bar low going into this year, but You're right. He has been better than last year, I'll say that.
But, even Samuelson, I don't need points from him, but, can you break out properly?
You have an A on your chest for a reason here.
I've seen you play well. We've seen you play well before. Just not working. Henry Jokiharju, that needs to be done. I can't believe they haven't scratched him or waived him. I'd rather see Dennis Gilbert play 12 minutes a night than Henry Jokiharju. Most of the time, if 8 times out of 10 you see a breakout stall, it's 23 or 10 that caused it. And those two are in the top 4. Samuelson is now playing with Owen Power. Henry Jokiharju was playing with Owen Power. That's just... Yeah. The defense is so much more infuriating and disappointing to me than the forward group, because I think most people would agree, necessarily goal scoring hasn't been the problem. The power play has been bad, but right now, you can't say goal scoring is a Sabres issue right now. To me, it's not the biggest issue.
Yeah, their last 5 games, 3 goals against 3, 2 against 3, 5, 2, 6. So they're not really in low scoring games for the most part. This isn't a team that can grind out a 1-0 or a 2-1 win.
No, and Luukkonen has been a little bit inconsistent. I don't think Luukkonen has been as inconsistent as he was the year that they barely missed the playoffs, because that was a year where Luukkonen just wasn't good. I think we've seen a little bit more of the better UPL, but I still think he has to get to a better floor. Because don't get me wrong, the New Jersey game he played well. He played really well, actually. He made a couple of huge saves. The New Jersey game, I didn't like a couple of the goals against, but overall he made some key saves when needed. He's there. He's playing better than he was a couple years ago. I'd like to see him play a little bit more consistently, but that being said, it's just get Owen Power a real partner, and then maybe you can actually see what you actually have in him, because Owen Power plays really well. He's on another 4 games in a row with an assist. He has 7 shots on goal against the New Jersey Devils. Owen Power has played fine, and he's doing this with Samuelson or Jokiharju as his partner. And even Bowen Byram. I like Bowen Byram a lot, but He's being carried right now by Rasmus Dahlin. When Bowen Byram plays with anybody besides Dahlin, it's not pretty. So it's like, to me, the defense has now become the more disappointing thing than the forward group, which
is crazy because we thought that would be a strong suit coming into the year.
And we said I still think they need a top 6 forward, don't get me wrong, but to me, it's flipped now where a top 4 defenseman is much more pressing need, in my opinion, than a top 6 scoring forward. If, in the future, if Zucker and, some of these other guys leave, well, then you need both again. But we'll see if the GM actually does something, which we'll get into later.
We'll get into that shortly here, but I know we're not doing swords up, swords down, but Yuri Kulich, to me, like, I look at what he's been doing. He's been winning faceoffs. Like, a couple games ago against Edmonton, he had 7 shots on net with 7 faceoff wins. Calgary, 9 faceoff wins. He had 6 shots against Seattle. Like, that's not easy to do for basically a rookie forward to be put in as the first line center, and B, still try to win faceoffs and try to produce offense at the same time. And I think having Tage has helped, and Peterka obviously picking it up has helped. But what Yuri Kulich is doing at this point in his career, when we thought, maybe he'd be a call-up guy to start the year, we were talking about maybe he can slot in as like a third-line winger. He's in a prominent spot right now. I know he's not on the top power play, but getting top-line minutes right now as your top-line center is not an easy thing to do in the National Hockey League.
He should be, though, right? Like, we can agree on that.
He's played like
power
it.
Play.
Yeah.
Put him on the top power play. No, like on the top power play.
Oh,
please
right.
Try him. The power play sucks. Can we try something different?
Well, I mean, they've basically ran with this. I mean, Jack Quinn's on the top unit. Like,
Tell me you can't try Yuri Kulich there. I know. Don't get me wrong. Like, if your brain is need to have somebody on the second unit, okay, put Jack Quinn on the second unit. Then, like, he hasn't figured it out either. So, like, let the people who have figured it out. Like, when Jason Zucker was sick for those couple games, they didn't score on the power play at all. I don't remember the stat. It was one, like Ray said it. I think it was like 1 for their last 27 in the New Jersey game.
Unreal.
They sucked on a 5-minute major. Like, try something different, please.
And if Zucker gets dealt at the deadline, maybe they'll put Kulich on there. But we'll get into that on a later show. But we're going to take a break on today's show. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about Kevin Adams a little bit, the deals that have happened around the league, and if the Sabres are going to kind of get in on this sort of mini trade deadline going into the Four Nations face-off, or if we expect a status quo like we've had for most of the season, despite being a last place team. We'll be right back on Sabres Semantics right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network after this commercial break.
Are you currently looking for work in the Niagara region? If so, you owe it to yourself to check out the services provided by the Niagara Employment Help Centre, located at 6100 Thorold Stone Road in Niagara Falls. Their many free services include a fully staffed resource area open to the public, resume and cover letter writing, local labor market information, job search strategies, assistance with clarifying employment, training and career goals, employment counseling and job search support, and Better Jobs Ontario information and registration assistance. Check out their website at ehc.on.ca or call 905-358-0021 for more information. The Niagara Employment Help Centre, helping people find work since 1983.
This Employment Ontario program is funded by the Government of Ontario. Pets bring immense joy to our homes, becoming an integral part of our families. But this living, loving experience often requires a little extra care and attention. That's where Global Pet Foods comes in, with owners and staff ready to support you every step of the way. Check out one of their locations today: 3643 Portage Road in Niagara Falls, 160 Highway 20 in Font Hill, or 400 Scott Street and 344 Glendale Avenue in St. Catharines. Global Pet Foods, where pets are undeniably part of the family. Proud to sponsor the Dog Pound Podcast, the official podcast of the Niagara Ice Dogs.
The great guys over at Hockeystickman are sponsoring this video. If you play hockey but are sick of paying upwards of $400 for top-end sticks, check these guys out. There's seriously no better place to shop. The guys are fun, easy, and offer a stress-free experience from start to finish. They get pro stock sticks from major junior teams right up to the NHL teams and sell them for half the price that the same stick would sell for at a retail store. To further support their mission of saving hockey families money, they offer closeout options, which entail taking last year's retail models and blowing them out for less than wholesale wholesale prices. It's literally the best prices on the internet for their sticks. And the best sticks of all may be their Pro Blackout series, which provide a top-end stick with no graphics and literally less than half the price of a branded top-end retail model. It's always been their best-selling stick despite super cool pro stock options. It's a no-brainer to shop with these guys, and trust me, they are beauties. Head over to hockeystickman.ca/thearmchairgm and get $15 off your first order. That's hockeystickman.ca/thearmchairgm to get an additional $15 off your first order when you sign up on their website. Check out our friends at Hockeystickman.
Celebrating a birthday, wedding, graduation, or just watching the big game, Carmine's Pizzeria Italiano is there to satisfy your pizza needs. Serving handmade Italian pizzas created with the freshest, top-quality ingredients, loaded subs, and their famous chicken wings. Platinum Award recipients of Community Votes Niagara for Best Pizza and Wings in all of the Niagara region 3 years running. Open 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. 7 days a week from their brand new location at 7156 Drummond Road in Niagara Falls. All payment options accepted to fit your convenience. Available for call-ahead pickup or delivery. Place your order today at 905-374-4400 or check out their online menu for the best quality pizza and wing combos you'll find in Niagara at carmine'spizzeria.ca. You've tried the rest, why not try the best? Carmine's Pizzeria Italiano, proudly serving the Niagara community since 2013.
You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network, the Niagara region's best local source for North American sports podcasting coverage. By sports fans, for sports fans.
Hey, hey, here we go, it's hockey night in Buffalo. Hey, hey, here we go, the boys in blue, white, and gold. Hey, hey, here we go, make some noise, get in the zone. All for one and one for all, let's hear you from your heart and soul. And we will stand, raising our hands, saying, let's go Buffalo, let's go Buffalo. We will be here till the end, saying, let's go Buffalo, let's go Buffalo.
Welcome back to part 2 of today's Sabres Semantics episode. Brandon Caputo and Austin Broad are back with you. Make sure to give us a follow on X at Sabres Semantics. Stay up to date with all of our Sabres coverage, as well as on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok by searching the Armchair GM Sports Network. Thank you to everybody that's tuned in on the video version on YouTube today. Make sure to hit like, hit subscribe, and smash that bell. Stay up to date with all of our video coverage. And to those listening today on your favorite on-demand audio platform, thank you very much for doing so. So, Austin, I know we're going to talk a lot here about Kevin Adams and what to do here, because they've got 2 games before the Four Nations break, I guess you can call it. Tonight they're playing Columbus, and then they're off until Saturday in Nashville, and then they won't play again until a home game on February 22nd, which then will have them play, I believe it's 8 games before the trade deadline, which early projections for this, we are going to do a live trade deadline reaction deadline night. We'll keep you guys updated on that. But as far as the next 2 games here, Austin, and then having that break, are we expecting a move to be made between now and Saturday? If we didn't see, well, Kubel was finally waived.
Yeah.
But, I mean, we were calling for that during the 13-game losing streak, but
I mean,
I'm just trying to give Adams something here, but
yeah, and like I know where this is going to go, and I don't know if we want to just get right into it. But the second JT Miller was traded, I think most, not even Sabres fans, most fans around the league kind of just knew what Vancouver was doing, right? Like trading JT Miller, Vancouver has their own issues going on. Miller has looked really good in his 2 games for Vancouver, or since getting traded from Vancouver. But no, I think the move that everyone was anticipating the Sabres might make before this Four Nations thing was the Elias Pettersson deal, right? And, you know, like, we're not crazy. Like, we're not making things up. There was a lot of smoke. I think it came down to the 2 teams most prominently mentioned by a lot of people were the Sabres and the Columbus Blue Jackets in on Elias Pettersson. And it makes sense, right? The cap space, assets that they could offer, and just Columbus not really having star power. They're a good team.
And they're without Monahan right now.
And I believe Boone Jenner's been out for this whole year,
He's
too.
been out the entire season.
Yeah. And then it was just the Sabres who reek of desperation, to put it bluntly. So like it made sense that those two teams were the teams that were mentioned. And I think most of us had, either you were someone like me who was like, okay, like this actually could happen, or you were just like, this team's never going to do anything, blah, blah, blah. But either way, the second that JT Miller trade was made, I think most people believe that. Maybe it wasn't dead, but it was definitely put on pause. And depending on who you believe and what your opinion and all this stuff is like Kevin Adams has apparently been one of the most active GMs all season trying to get trades done. Well, guess how many trades he's made in the season? 0. So like it was the worst possible outcome for someone like me who's an Adams hater. He got the cop out of Vancouver didn't move Pettersson, so what do you want me to do? The best case scenario was he was traded to the Sabres. The other best case scenario was he was traded to the Blue Jackets, so at least people could be like, Adams cannot get deals done. He just can't. He can't make that big acquisition, which he still can't. But right now he has a little bit of a cop-out on Vancouver didn't trade Pettersson. What do you want me to do? And to me, that's bogus. It's your job as a GM to make them to make people want to trade with you. And this isn't even necessarily the Pettersson thing. But your whole deal was, we can't get players to come here because we're not a destination, trade protection, all this stuff. Why has Pettersson had no trade protection? You know who else didn't have trade protection? Morgan Frost and Joel Farabee. They didn't have trade protection. You know who else didn't have trade protection? Capo. Defenseman Alexander Carrier, who was traded before the Christmas roster freeze. Like, have been players moved without trade protection that address needs of the Buffalo Sabres that Adams could have tried to go get. And if we don't want to talk about trades, there's waiver claims he could have made because Barry Kapanen was on waivers. Arthur Kaliev was on waivers. Lesser extent because he's clearly something's wrong with him off the ice, but Daniel Sprong was on waivers.
Nobody was taking Brandon Saad's contract, but that was another one.
No, but that's another one.
Yep.
Like, it is what it is. So it strikes me as very difficult to believe that a move will be made by the Sabres. I know before the Predators game on Friday, he said that he was looking to make a hockey trade, which is all fine and dandy. That's the trade you should be looking to make. And maybe there are some parallels to the Middlestat Byram trade last year where he's talked about wanting to sign players and then he went out and made a trade. But right now, it needs to be said, like, he struggles to make the big forward acquisition because he hasn't. If you count Alex Tuch, sure, but he was forced to make that Jack Eichel trade. Nothing against McLeod, nothing against Greenway. Those were all fine trades. They're not big-time forward acquisitions. And I think that's why so many people bought into this Pettersson thing it was the perfect storm. A guy with 7 years on his contract who has scored 100 points, who is, as all we know, is friends with your captain. He has no trade protection. You have something that the Canucks want, and apparently they liked Bowen Byram and Dylan Cousins. It was just a perfect storm, and when it didn't happen, to like most people, it was just, I don't think this is ever going to happen for Adams.
There's been 26 moves since the beginning of November, which was when the Sabres started to go on that slide. The Sabres have not been involved in any one of those moves. Some of them to a minor extent, some of them to a bigger extent. They made that one AHL swap with Colton Pullman that like nobody even remembers. Forgot to mention Isak Rosén got called up, so that's another big acquisition there for Adams. I mean, no disrespect to Isaac Rosén, but again, like just another call up from Rochester. Tyson Kozak has been in the lineup and out of the lineup and up and down. But again, we see these moves that have been made around the league. You already mentioned the Morgan Frost and Calgary-Philadelphia swap, which to me made 0 sense for Philadelphia, but I mean that's another story. We're not the Flyers podcast here, but like even the Mikko Rantanen trade, which was an insane trade by the way, in the middle of a season, I think it's good for both sides given Rantanen's a pending UFA and Necas will cost Colorado less and he's having a career year. Yeah. Another guy that the Sabres could have got in the offseason, Martin Necas, but the price was too steep for Kevin Adams, which again just makes you shake your head on that one. But you keep mentioning like these guys that have been traded that have been available. The Sabres are a last place team right now. It's not like they're sitting in a wild card spot or a top 3 team in the conference that doesn't want to make a ton of shakeups other than like rentals here and there. Like they have assets to be able to move. They have a lot of good prospects. They have the depth in their draft pick cupboard. They have some guys with term that, like you mentioned, the Cousins and those players and Byram are commodities around the league. Whether or not we think that they're doing well right now in the Sabres, they are coveted by other teams. And we saw, to me, the Rangers paid a discount for JT Miller, which it just seems like the Rangers always end up paying less for some reason than what the fair value should be. Like, no disrespect to Philip Hedl, he's a third-line player. They got a B-level prospect and a protected first-round pick, so, like, it's just, like, the Sabres could have matched that if they really wanted to, like, easily. The Sabres easily could have, outdone that trade for JT Miller. Not that they would have taken him on, but there are these trades that we were seeing in the Pettersson deal that if the trade was good enough, Pettersson would be a Sabre because they would have taken that trade over the JT Miller trade easily with the return that they probably could have gotten for Pettersson. And whether that deal maybe gets done in the summer or if Vancouver just says now the problem's out, now Pettersson's like going to be our franchise player going forward. But it just frustrates you because you see so many moves going on that the Sabres have the assets to make, but Adams is apparently on the phone 24/7 talking trades, but then one never gets, nothing ever materializes.
Yeah, I think all intents and purposes, like the JT Miller one, I know he had the trade protection and he only wanted to go to New York and all that, blah, blah, blah. But by all intents and purposes, like, it seemed like a lot of the Canucks liked JT Miller. It seemed like a lot of the fans there liked JT Miller. It seemed like JT Miller liked being there. I have no idea what this rift with Pettersson is. No one knows. But it felt like, if you made a good enough offer, you could have pried Pettersson away. Now, again, Vancouver probably made the smart move, right? Not trading their 26-year-old former 100-point center. Like, I'm not, from a Vancouver standpoint, it makes sense to hold on to him if the offers weren't there. But I don't like that that's a cop-out for Adams. Like, Pettersson or not, there have been moves that could be made, and he hasn't made them. You can't sit there and tell me that this team wouldn't have benefited from some kind of change during that 13-game losing streak. Your season, before that started, we were third place in the Atlantic Division.
Wild.
Even a month into that disastrous stretch, you were only 4 points behind the Detroit Red Wings. Now, we weren't firing the head coach because we just hired Lindy Ruff, but Detroit fired their head coach and they're 14-4-1 under Todd McClellan. So don't tell me a major shakeup, whether it's a player or a firing, doesn't make a difference. It could. Would it have? I don't know. But I watched this team play, and they have pieces. They have talent. They're the best first period team in the NHL. One of them. To me, the GM shoulders a lot of this blame. Pretty much. Not all of it, because the players deserve blame, right? The players also couldn't win games. But the GM saw it and did nothing. Now, if you think he's handcuffed by Pagula, that's a different story. But to me, it's be smart enough to work within the handcuffs then. I don't know what anyone's opinion on Joel Farabee is, but Joel Farabee is a player who's making $5 million. Is that a lot for what he's produced? Maybe. But he's making $5 million a year for 4 more years. He had no trade protection.
The Sabres have $15 million in cap space.
He's been available. You couldn't have done, not necessarily right now, you couldn't have done that in the summer for that extra top 6 forward addition. Would it have made a difference? I have no idea. Morgan Frost was available. Has been available all year long. Couldn't have tried to go do something there. You know what I mean? It's just like... And now the Pettersson thing, it raises another question to me, which is, if you were I don't know how close the Sabres actually were. I don't know how close Columbus was. I don't know how close Vancouver was to actually trading Elias Pettersson. But if that was there, what do you do if you're Kevin Adams? Do you wait until the draft? Or do you take those assets you were going to use for that and go big game hunting again? Because I know what I would like him to do. Keep being aggressive and go big game hunting. But I don't until he does that, I don't think he's going to.
It's almost like, and again, this is just me thinking about it. It was almost like Colorado and Carolina pulling off that Mikko Rantanen and Nietzsche swap out of nowhere. Really might have caught some other GMs off guard, and then Vancouver lost another option in Carolina because they had been talked about for Pettersson or Miller. And once Carolina went out because they went and got Rantanen in that trade, it almost like left like the Rangers were the only possibility for Miller, and then it opened the door for Columbus and Buffalo to get in on Pettersson. But it was almost like that trade kind of like, shook up the rest of the GMs as just a wild, massive superstar for potential superstar trade out of nowhere in the middle of the season that it was like, wow, these trades can get done, because we've always been told, oh, these trades can't get done in the season. They got to wait till the summer. Well, we just saw one happen. So if Kevin Adams could have made one, he would have by now. And if the assets are there and if the trade's there, make it. Why wait till the deadline? Why sit on your $15 million in cap space right now, or whether that's less with the internal cap or anything like that? It just seems like they're making a lot of excuses when like you said, they have the ability to go hunting. They have the cap space that a lot of teams don't have. They have the draft capital. They have the prospect pool, one of the best in the National Hockey League, to go out and make these moves that some of these other teams couldn't do, and they're not using it to their advantage.
Yeah, and I'm not going to touch on it too much because we'll probably do it on the trade deadline preview episode, but it's why I'm hesitant to even pursue a trade of a guy like Zucker or Greenway, like a pending UFA, because if someone gives you a second or a first round pick or whatever, I don't trust Kevin Adams to use that currency to go get something good because he hasn't done it yet. The closest thing he did was traded Savoy for McLeod, which has been a good trade. McLeod's on pace for a career year here. That's a fantastic trade. But that's not the difference maker that he's needed to step up and make. And that wasn't a first round pick. He drafted Savoy and then moved on from him. It's the guy. I'm not going to say he doesn't have limitations or restraints on him. I'm sure he does. I'm sure there's a reason that, they are using the cap space that they are using and all this bogus things that the owner might be impending on this team. But that doesn't mean you just do nothing. You find a way to work within whatever restraints you have on you. You have players that people want. There are players out there that don't have trade protection. Now, if you want to give me the excuse that none of those players were moved, bull crap. Make them want to get moved. That's your job. Like, I'm not telling you to trade Dylan Cousins for a bag of pucks, but if someone wants to have a legitimate conversation about Dylan Cousins, you have those legitimate conversations. And if you can't get those legitimate conversations to eventually lead to a impactful trade, either one, your asset's value is not as much as you think it is, which I honestly don't know what Cousins' value around the league is. I have no idea. He's clearly not playing well, and he's on a 7-year contract. So I don't know what his value is. But if you can't get a real trade package for a player like him, one, your asset's just not good enough. So you have to eat it, which is not a good thing because Kevin Adams, committed money to that asset. Or two, other teams just don't take you seriously as a GM. And I think that that's probably pretty likely at this point. I don't know how many teams take Kevin Adams serious as a GM in the NHL because has he made some good moves? Yes, he absolutely deserves credit for some of the moves that he has made. But when the team has needed a top 6 forward for 3 seasons now, and the closest we've gotten, this is not a shot at Jason Zucker, but the closest we've gotten to that acquisition is Jason Zucker. And that was a 1-year deal, which we don't know if he's even going to be here past this year. Like, he's just, I don't know. I struggle to, I don't want to rag on him and say he sucks as a GM because I don't think he sucks. He's made some smart moves. But he's lacking in areas that GMs I don't think should be lacking. Like, it's been 5 years. You're not learning anymore. You need to take that next step. You've said it yourself. We need to take that next step. You as a GM haven't really done anything to help your team take that next step.
Do you think if he had the urgency or knew that if they didn't get in this year that he wouldn't be the general manager come next season, then he would be moving hell and high water to make a move to be able to bring somebody in here to make the playoffs? But obviously that's, where they're given in the standings right now, that seems like a pipe dream at this point. But if I was in that spot and I knew that this was my final year to make the playoffs, I'd be trying moving everything, trying to make something stick on the wall.
Well, one, it's kind of why I think he's clearly not acting like a GM who's worried about losing his job. Fair to say.
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
But you look at it from the common sense side, whether it's, I'm going to say this, the Elias Pettersson trade. I'm going to use that as an example because that's one that was a realistic option. But this applies to any major trade that you can make. Right now, trading for a guy like Elias Pettersson, I said it on Twitter, it has 3-pronged effect. One, gives your fans a reason to watch the rest of the year. You're telling me people wouldn't be interested to see a player like Elias Pettersson join this team, and people would go watch to see what that looks like.
His jerseys be flying off the shelves.
2, it shows Darlene, Thompson, Tuck, who has 1 year left on his contract after this year's over. Like, it shows those guys, hey, I'm serious here. I'm going to try to make this team good. 3, it shows, now this needs a lot more work because you would need to not only do a move like this, but also show that you're going to keep winning. But at least it shows some potential free agents out there or guys with trade protection. Like, I'm trying to make my team have some respect around here. It has 3, and yes, don't get me wrong, there is downside if you trade for a struggling center with $11 million. But how much more negative can things get for the Sabres? We're on year 14. Until I see some significant improvements, I'm just going to assume it's going to be year 15 after this year. Because I know everyone was happy about the salary cap going up, but guess what? The Sabres are just a J.J. Peterka and Ryan McLeod contract away from hitting the cap floor. That's it. That's it.
And, I mean, if you look at the cap and Dylan Cousins, I mean, if you put him in the deal, he's making, what, 7.1?
Yeah.
And then you subtract what Pettersson's making, it's still a win.
If the rumor was true for Byram and Cousins, the money was a wash.
Yeah.
A guy like Byram is a guy they need to make a decision on because he's a pending RFA. And if he doesn't want to be here, you're getting 2 years max, and then he'll walk to UFA status.
We know that's
so either
disaster.
1, if you value him as a long-term piece, you better show him that you're serious. Or 2, if you don't value him as a long-term piece, you better sell high on his value and get something that can keep your team, like help your team.
Now, at least Middlestat hasn't been a world beater this year in Colorado. No, it sounds like he might even be on the block.
Yeah, the Byram Middlestat trade, I have no regrets with that. I give Adam some credit for that. He appears to have gotten whatever value he can out of Byram. And Byram and Dahlin have played well together. Like I said, the issue is Byram doesn't play well with anyone else. So it's either Byram, you're here and you're on my number 1 pair, which I think at this point Rasmus Dahlin can play with anybody and have success. But you kind of have to make your decision on Byram because he's a pending RFA and he needs a contract. And I don't know if you can get him to sign here for more than 2 years because what have you shown him since you acquired him that signing here long term is something he should do for his career? I know he's already won a cup, but like, please, he's not going to commit to a long term contract here. Why would he? Or if he does, you got to pay him a lot of money. And I don't know how much money you necessarily want to be paying him.
We've seen him frustrated at times this year too. Like,
yeah,
you know,
I mean,
he's not used to this. Like with Colorado, he's not used to this.
No, it's like I said, the GM has done some good. So like, I'm not saying he's the worst GM in the league. Well, he might be. I'm not saying he's the worst GM Buffalo's ever had. He's done some good things, but he's not. His signature trade is Eichel, and that trade was forced upon him. Outside of that Eichel trade, his signature trade is Byram for Middlestat. And while that's a fine trade, but that hasn't... You subtracted a top 6 center, top 6 forward, and you replace that with Kulich, I guess. But even then, that took till 5 games ago when Kulich was the number 1 center. So
and he's lucky that Kulich was that good that quickly.
Yeah. But like the 2 biggest needs for this team have been a partner for power and a top 6 scoring forward. And those have been the 2 biggest needs for 3 years. And they've yet to be addressed. So it's like all the good that he might have done is overshadowed by that. And, oh, by the way, like how many GMs in this league would go through a 13-game winless streak and not do something to shake up their organization? Now, again, he wasn't firing Lindy Ruff, and I don't, obviously not. You didn't waive anybody. You didn't claim anybody. You didn't make a trade.
When there were trades to be had.
There's a reason that the Sabres have no respect amongst fans and players. And it's because they've proven time and time again they're not serious about winning. That's why making a big trade right now proves it could get you some little respect back. And it's why I think they should be doing it.
No.
I know people are worried if Cousins goes on and wins a cup somewhere else, but I do not care. He does not look good here. He doesn't.
If he becomes the next O'Reilly, Eichel, Reinhart, whatever at this point.
Live with it. You've already done it 5 times. It can't get any worse.
Well, I don't know if you want to leave it there because we've obviously got a couple of shows coming up leading up to the deadline and on deadline recap. We're going to come back on here unless the Sabres make an unbelievable trade and we have to react to it like instantly, we will be back. But regardless, it's tough to think that with the 27 trades that have been made since November around the league, and besides an AHL swap, Buffalo has not gotten involved. It's just, for a team that's sitting last place in the conference right now, can we even say that we want them to continue to win games? Because is it going to be better or worse?
I could say yeah. I don't want them to tank because depending on, don't get me wrong, Schaefer, Hagens, Martone, Misa, they're all fine players, but that's not what the Sabres need.
We've been looking at that for 14 years now.
Yeah, that's not what the Sabres need. So I will want them to keep winning. The only thing that might give anyone a little bit of solace, and it's or you could just call it a bunch of fluff, because that's kind of what this thing is. But in the last, not today's episode, but Friedman did hint at Friday, the day that the JT Miller trade happened. He did quickly mention he believed Buffalo was still in on Pettersson. Buffalo was trying to figure out what they wanted to do there, but did kind of mention that Buffalo has a lot of other big decisions they need to make. Well, I hope those big decisions are potential trades. So is the thought of an actual trade happening, or a hockey trade, because those are the trades that matter here? Is the complete thought of that dead? Not yet. So there's a little bit of solace there, but if you're like me, until it happens, I'm never going to believe it happens.
Yeah, I feel like the Sabres have been in on
Adams is the king of being involved in talks and getting nothing done.
I feel like it's been a discussion on every one of the 32 Thoughts with Elliot Friedman every week. The Sabres have been a team that's involved, and then they never end up being left on the dance floor without a partner. So again, it's just tough. So we'll see tonight against Columbus, and then Saturday at Nashville, and then they've got a break to think about it. And when Kevin Adams comes out of that break, he's got some tough decisions to make going up to the deadline. But if he doesn't make a big, tough decision, we don't know what might happen this offseason. But I don't know if you want to leave it there.
Yeah, it's kind of all I got. We'll talk more as the trade deadline gets closer. I don't really have the appetite to talk about pending UFAs get traded, but at least maybe 2 weeks from now. I don't know. Greenway, I don't know. Is he even we should talk about it later, but
yeah.
Does Greenway even want to step foot on the ice for the Sabres again? I don't know.
Final thought, Tage not being on USA's roster for the Four Nations.
Oh, that's been bogus since the moment that it happened, and it is what it is for him. He's probably pissed. I would be too. I wonder how much these players truly do care, though, because the Peter Angelo situation was a bit of a head scratcher to me. I'm not playing for Team Canada because I'm hurt, but I can play for the Knights. So I'm sure the players care because the Olympics is coming up, and a guy like Peter Angelo basically knows he's on the Olympic roster. But it is interesting to me that a guy like him was I'll skip it.
I'm almost waiting for a big American player to be yeah, I've got a vacation booked for 2 weeks, and then, hey, Tage, you want to come play? I'm kind of
Matthews was not that he was skipping it for anything like that, but with his injury history, I was wondering if he was going to be a guy that suited up for him, and by all and everything that we've been told and everything that it seems he is. So it's that. Gotta feel bad for Finland losing Heiskanen and I guess Hakanpää, but it's not like he's played much this year. But it's really funny when you replace a guy like Heiskanen with Henry Jokiharju.
I'm not. We'll just say we'll look forward to seeing Dahlin play on Sweden.
Yeah, I am interested in this Four Nations. I don't know. I'll watch it. I'm interested. I don't know. It'll be fun, right? It's
finally see some best on best again.
Yeah, it's a 2-week break, but the Four Nations is only a week of that, so the players still get a week off. So I don't know. I'll tune into it.
Yeah. So that's going to wrap up our Sabres Semantics episode. Again, we're going to come back here more frequently going up to the deadline and the deadline recap show that we're going to do the day of the NHL trade deadline. Thank you to everybody for sticking with us here through a little bit of a lull there in January. Not a whole lot to talk about with the Sabres, and we look forward to bringing you more content here on the network and with this show, especially the next month or so. It's always a fun time for discussion. So for Austin Broad, my name is Brandon Caputo. That's going to wrap up Sabres Semantics right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network. Proudly brought to you by the Niagara Employment Help Centre, helping people find work in Niagara since 1983. Thank you to everybody that tuned in video today on YouTube and those listening on your favorite on-demand audio platform. So until next time, that's it. That's going to do it. And enjoy the Four Nations face-off, and we'll talk to you again very soon. You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network.